Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of My Favorite Things. Since school is starting back up, I figured now would be the perfect time to talk about Monsters University. Cause really, how many school movies out there are actually good? In my opinion, it's probably the most underappreciated Pixar movie. I mean, come on, a movie about robots falling in love got better reviews. According to SpongeBob, the most credible source, robots can't love. I wouldn't claim that Monsters University is the best Pixar movie, or that it's even as good as its predecessor, but it's still a great film. I would even go as far as to say that it's worthy of a My Favorite Things episode. Monsters University is definitely the best Pixar sequel, or prequel in this case, since Toy Story 2. So let's see why Monsters University is one of my favorite things. MU, of course, is a prequel to Monsters, Inc. Like most other Pixar sequels, it's completely unnecessary and uncalled for, but the story is actually quite good. It makes an interesting change by putting the focus on Mike as the main character this time around. Monsters University is about Mike trying to get into the scare program to become a scarer. Scarers scare children to harvest their screams for energy. Why do they just scare children? They'd get a lot more screams from YouTube Let's Players.
Because
you're gonna have to face it.
No.
Yeah!
Go eat! Go eat! Eat! After he and Sully get kicked out of the program, Mike gathers a team of losers to compete in the Scare Games, a contest to see which monsters are the scariest. The Dean, Hardscrabble, makes a deal with Mike that if he wins, then he and his entire team can enter the Scare program. So much of Monsters University is a sporty competition movie as we follow this group of nobodies compete to prove themselves. As a competition movie, it's really good. We get good characters, fun activities, and an amazing third act that takes it from being a good competition movie in the Monsters Inc. universe to being a great standalone film, but I'll get more into that in the next segment. Overall, I really enjoyed the story of MU. Usually these kinds of movies are predictable and follow the same formula, but the ending caught me completely by surprise, and it impressed me tremendously. Even the basic competition stuff was all done really well. Making Mike the main character instead of Sully was a great choice, and both of their characterizations are excellent. After taking a field trip to Monsters Incorporated in the opening scene, a young Mike worked his butt off to get accepted into MU as a scaring major. Wait, does Mike even have a butt? Everybody questions Mike's scaring abilities because he doesn't look scary, so he's determined to prove them wrong. That determination drives him in school to work harder than anyone else. Sully is the exact opposite. He's the son of a famous scarer, so he just has it in him. The problem is that he puts no effort into his scare studies. He doesn't see the need for studying. All it takes to make someone scream is a good jump scare. Sully tries to make it by sheer talent alone. Because of his name, everyone expects him to be an amazing scarer. Instead of studying or working hard to alleviate the pressure like Mike, he just relaxes and enjoys his college experience. I know that this sounds kind of gay, but Mike and Sully complete each other. Mike has all the brains while Sully has all the talent. They both have what the other doesn't, hence why they always work as a team. I enjoyed the tension between the two towards the beginning. They started off as polar opposites, but grew closer as they needed each other to win the Scare Games and get back into the program. Okay, so the twist that made this movie remarkable. Mike and Sully's team of losers, Uzma Kappa, wins the Scare Game after Mike pulled off a record-breaking scare. And that's where most average competition movies would leave it. But it turns out that Mike didn't pull off the scare. Sully tampered with the settings on the animatronic kid to guarantee a victory. Outraged, Mike sneaks into the human world to try to prove himself, to see if he's scary once and for all. Turns out, he isn't. Everyone actually was right about him to an extent. After the door gets powered down from the side of the monster world, trapping Mike and Sully in the human world, they combine their talents to pull off the biggest scare ever to repower the door from the human side. So yes, Mike was never scary. He is a brilliant scare tactician though. Doing this as a true climax of the film was a move of pure genius. I'll get more into that when I talk about themes. A couple of other characters are good too. Dean Hardscrabble is technically the antagonist, something I usually save for the next segment, but she's not necessarily a villain. She's at odds with Mike and Sully, but she doesn't actively try to thwart their efforts. In fact, she goes along with Mike's deal and is willing to play along. Hardscrabble essentially represents the status quo. She wants specific kinds of monsters in her scare program and is closed-minded to new, unique kinds of talent. Hardscrabble kicks Mike out of the scare program for not being scary enough, but later gets shocked to see Uzma Kappa win, and the one she kicked out of the program pull off the biggest scare ever. She's even given a pretty nice arc by the end, when she decides to accept a broader range of students into scaring. Some of the other members of Uzma Kappa are pretty good too, like Dawn and Squishy. Some of the others are serviceable. There are no standouts among their fraternity, but they get the job done. Overall though, the characters are excellent. There are some really good themes and lessons in Monsters University. Perhaps the most apparent is nature versus nurture. Sully is nature. He's just naturally gifted when it comes to scaring. He doesn't need to practice it, he just does it. Mike is nurture. There's nothing scary at all about him, so he studies and prepares as much as possible to be as good as everyone else. Perhaps another good example in the real world would be basketball. A 4'10 guy can practice all he wants, but he'll never make it to the NBA. Another person who's 6'10 clearly has the potential to be great at basketball, but if he doesn't practice or study all the moves and tricks, then he's not going anywhere either. You need both practice and the natural talent to become amazing. Same applies to scaring. I love that this movie doesn't give the typical always follow your dreams no matter what kind of lesson, because that's a bad thing to teach kids. I'm not saying that dreams are bad, but sometimes they get blown out of proportion, like that 4'10 basketball player example. Maybe he should try singing, dancing, or debating instead. Mike's dream is to be a scarer, but no matter how hard he tries, he just wasn't cut out for it. Like I said previously, he's not scary, but he's amazing at planning. So we should take what we're good at and build upon that, not spend our whole lives chasing something that's impossible. This segues perfectly into another theme in MU, which is talent. Everybody has their own special abilities. Having a world full of unique monsters helps show this theme very well. No two monsters are alike, but they each use their own gifts for scaring. Randall, for example, can camouflage, and that makes him the most OP monster in my opinion. Don is just a salesman, but Mike teaches him to use his tentacles to cling to walls, making him a valued member of Uzma Kappa during the scare games. Mike can plan a good scare, and Sully can perform it better than anyone. So this movie does present a lot of great and intelligent themes. Besides all the deep stuff, there's a lot to like about MU on the surface. The animation is excellent. The film looks gorgeous, especially in the end when Mike and Sully enter the human world. The environment looks so realistic, and this movie came out years ago. Once again, Billy Crystal and John Goodman lend their voices to the characters Mike and Sully. Both of them do a fantastic job in their roles. Whenever I see John Goodman in a movie, all I think about is Sully, so it's so hard for me to take him seriously. Also, the soundtrack may not be quite as good as the originals, but it's still great. And there's a lot of funny humor in this movie, like Squishy's mom listening to metal in her car, Sully dancing. Some of the games I found pretty funny, and I enjoyed some of the nods to Monsters Inc., like Randall having a Winds of Change poster, and Mike's signature yell. So there's a lot to appreciate in this movie. Yeah, even though I value Monsters University more than most, there are a few things that I have major issues with. Most of the things that don't work for me are all the constant and unnecessary callbacks to the original. I know I just complimented some of them, but too many times they're just so blatant and feel so out of place. I like that MU takes a completely different path than the original, but it's as if the movie feels the need to prove itself as a true Monsters movie, like it's an illegitimate child of the series. Raj shows up in the end, which makes no sense. The abominable snowman appears in the credits, which makes no sense. And Randall swearing his vengeance on Sully makes me cringe every time I see it, and yet again makes no sense. I get that the CDA should show up after Mike breaches the door, okay, but why does Roz need to make a cameo? If she's number one, then why does she need to be on the scene? After the first one, you'd think she's a more behind-the-scenes person. And she says she'll keep an eye on Mike and Sully. Why? What's so important about them that you need to stalk them? When did the CDA become the Illuminati? And how come Mike and Sully didn't recognize their former boss, the abominable snowman, after being banished? And giving Randall a personal hatred of Sully over beating him in one round of the scare games was such a dumb idea. In the original, Randall just wanted to be the best scarer and break the all-time scare record. Sully being number one was his natural enemy. And Sully disrupted his and Waternoose's plan to kidnap children, so of course he's gonna hate Sully. It wasn't because of some stupid college grudge he had against him. Another problem besides the annoying references is some of the humor. Even though I just complimented that too, sometimes it's about as forced as Padme's neck. Exhibit A.
I'm a dance major.
And I'm not.
5, 6, 7, 8. 7, 8, turn. And turn. Why didn't you turn?
Because we never agreed to do this.
You said this was gonna be cool.
No one said this was gonna be cool.
Now I'm embarrassed.
Exhibit B.
I'm Art, New Age philosophy major. Excited to live with you and laugh with you and cry with you.
So, summing it up, the problems are stupid callbacks and some of the forced humor. Out of all the unnecessary sequels Pixar's putting out, Monsters University is certainly the best, and it's probably Pixar's most underappreciated film. I can't deny that it has its faults that pull it down from being among Pixar's best. Even with that being said, there are still fantastic characters, a phenomenal third act, important themes and lessons to take away, beautiful animation, great voice acting, a stellar soundtrack, and lots of fun. And for those reasons, Monsters University is one of my favorite things.